Dumelang. Le kae? Re hona. Di madekwana. Minjani. Beautiful. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let me welcome you to the 5th Annual George Negota Memorial Lecture. This is the fifth time that we are having this. Let me start by introducing myself. My name is Mpho Mashita, and I'm going to be your MC for this evening. Are we ready to have an experience this evening, to have a wonderful experience? Beautiful. Usually when we talk about memorial lectures, this is a time where we come in remembrance, where we honor someone's memory, where we honor someone's intellectual contribution. And that is exactly what we are doing this evening, honoring the late George Negota. Now, before we get into the proceedings of the evening, let me just make sure that I'm checking that when we came into the venue this evening, we are aware of where the bathroom is. In case you don't know, when you come into the venue, when you check on my left, that is where you'll be able to access the bathrooms. And cell phones, let's make sure that we have them on silent this evening. But I'm going to give you an opportunity right now to make use of your cell phones. Are you on social media? Because if you're on social media, I would like you to follow the BMF on different social media pages at BMF National. And if you are not, why are your cell phones not coming out? You're already following? Beautiful. If you're already following, then I would like to do a simple exercise with you this evening. I'd like us to whip out our cell phones and take a selfie. You are looking beautiful. You are looking handsome. And some of you are giving me threatening faces. I'm not sure what to make of those faces. But if I can ask, are we not photo people? We are not. We are going to become photo people this evening. Under my guidance, you are in safe hands. So let's take out our cell phones. I know it's a professional setting. Don't be scared. You will not be labeled as a slay anything. It's very much safe. Don't be ashamed. Don't be embarrassed. It's a safe space. Your cell phone's out, take a selfie. If you want, grab the person next to you, take a selfie with them. This is the way also you're going to be getting the business card. And you know what I mean? Because now you have their picture. And now you can send it to them later on and say, hey, it was lovely connecting with you at the BMF event. You see, I care about you. So now that we have the pictures, we are going to go and post them. If you're not on social media or you haven't posted in a while, don't be scared. I know you are active on your statuses. WhatsApp is a big social media platform, in case you didn't know. Very powerful. So if you haven't posted in a while on WhatsApp status, give them something, to discuss this evening as we are here discussing our business. So I'm going to give you a chance. I'm trying to help you understand the hashtag that we are using this evening. Our hashtag is #BMF. We have two hashtags, #BMF, #Annual George Negota Lecture. If you'd like, you can also, if you are sharing on social media platforms where you can tag the BMF official handle, it's at BMF National. If you're only going to be sharing on your WhatsApp status, it's #BMF, #Annual George Negota Lecture. Got it? Thank you for being great sports. So, as we're kickstarting our lecture this evening, I'm just going to be sharing a bit. Between 1984 and 1986, those are the years that the BMF was under the presidency of George Negota. And today, as we are in this room, remembering his contribution to managerial leadership development in South Africa, and most importantly in Limpopo, because we are in Limpopo right now, we stand in this room having a very significant and strong understanding of what the BMF has been trying to achieve, not only in the province, but also across all of the country. The development and empowerment of managerial leadership, Very key, very important. When we are sitting in our own social corners, I don't know if you've heard the saying, people don't leave jobs, they leave bad managers. Have you heard that? So I think that is something that the BMF is really working against with the different interventions that they would have, especially when it comes to black professionals in the country, in the province. Whether we are looking at entrepreneurship, whether we are looking at workplace interventions, whether we are looking at young professionals, and I'm so happy to see young people also in attendance today, and also looking at the student chapters. I've had the privilege of meeting students who, are forming part of the BMF in different student chapters, especially right here in the province. So tonight is all about reflecting. It's all about reflecting on the foundation that has been laid by George Negota, a very firm foundation. We also take stock of the BMF role in South Africa and also in Limpopo. And maybe let me take this time to just reflect on Limpopo as a province. Very interesting economic and labor market trends that I can just share from 2024, looking at the very first quarter. Unemployment rate, as we sit right here in the province, sitting at 32.7% in the first quarter of 2024. And looking at the labor force participation, very important and also of very key interest to the BMF in the province, an increase that came to 0.7% in the fourth quarter of 2024. So we continue to see the strides made by the BMF in the province in terms of what they're trying to achieve, working through different levels and trying to increase that for intervention in socio-economic transformation. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to be doing a lot of the talking this evening. I will just be facilitating the conversations that are going to be happening in this venue. So this is the 5th Annual George Negota Memorial Lecture. A round of applause for that, please. Our first speaker for opening remarks, please let's give a warm round of applause as we welcome the acting provincial chairperson, Daisy Rampela.
We are blessed with 3 names, Mpho. We have a chairperson, Ntate Makwana is Mpho, and our president is Mpho, and the MC is Mpho. It must say something to you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My task is just to put you at ease, to welcome you. You are at home. My name is Daisy, the acting chair of BMF Limpopo Province. But allow me also to acknowledge the guest, Ntate Makwana, my president, the president of LUBF, and all the guests, the Negota family. We are just here to hear what it's all about. It's a welcome to the 5th Annual Negota Lecture. So we are welcomed. I really appreciate for your presence. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sweet and to the point. The next speaker that you're going to be hearing from this evening, very new in his seat, very new in his position, and it's been very interesting this evening. I've just been observing as he came into the venue, walking around, talking to different people, and it's always interesting when we have a new broom that is coming to sweep. There's always so much advice, that comes to this new person to say, you should consider this, you should do this, have you thought about this? I've realized this. I see you are moving in this way. Be careful of that. Don't do that. Do this. And, it was just very interesting to observe. Nothing wrong with that. But I think we are all eager to just hear this evening from the newly elected president of the Black Management Forum, Mpho Motsei. He'll be coming through to highlight the purpose of the event for this evening. Please, ladies and gentlemen, a warm round of applause as he comes to the stage.
Mpho Mashita, thank you very much for for accepting our invite. The past president, Mayor Begi, thank you very much. I was not aware you are here, and I was very excited that you are here, and that you are taking a holiday in our province. That's helpful. It means you are doing a great job in making sure you promote tourism. Thank you very much, sir, for being here. To our keynote speaker, Datem Pomakwana, thank you very much for accepting our invite, sir. We are looking forward to hearing from you, our giant. We're very excited to hear that you are going to be the one who's going to do the keynote. To the entire staff of the BMF that is here, led by the Managing Director, Ntatemo Ndendlovu, thank you very much for coming to Limpopo and supporting us. And to the Negota family, thank you very much for allowing us. We'll fix our mistakes, but we couldn't let this day pass like we did last year. We're supposed to force to make sure that this lecture continues, because for us it's very important of what the contribution of Ntate George Mandla Negota did. So we couldn't make sure that this year it doesn't happen. Hence, we are very excited. I've got the other dignitaries who are here. I've got Prof. Setati from the University of Limpopo. He has grown to become my friend. Thank you very much for honoring us and with your team that came here. We really appreciate this, the BMF, for being here. So, Ntate Makwana, we have a very great relationship, and Ntate Begi with the University of Limpopo. Solid relationship. To a point that they decided to appoint us to sit in the advisory committee of their MBA. So they need us to come closer, Ntate Begi, to assist them with how to shape their curricula, but at the same time, to assist them how we can make sure that their graduate can be able to be relevant in terms of the market. So we would employ you to come and assist us in terms of assisting the university. It's a very historic university that we think has a potential. And we also have a very great relation with also University of Venda and the VC there. So the Limpopo BMF has very strong relations with the higher institutions here, and would really want you to employ you to come closer to assist when it comes to the advice that they would need. From time to time, they're consulting with us, so we can be able to assist them. Maybe let me thank the chairperson of the province, Mayor Daisy. We acknowledge you. The BMF is in good hand in Limpopo. We are happy that you are the one who's in charge and running this thing. I have confidence in you, you know that, and I don't have any doubt that you'll be able to continue. Members of the media, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm being told that I must tell the purpose of today. Good evening and thank you for being here. Program Director, allow me. Mine is to give welcome address highlighting the purpose of this event of George Negota Lecture. The fact that the event is called the 5th George Negota Lecture already gives us an idea why we are here. His name is Manda, George Negota, am I right? For those ones who are not aware, the name Manda, which translates power, it says it all. For he was indeed powerful man in all aspects of his life, a man who did not allow power to corrupt him, but the man who used the power he had for the benefit of others. That's the man we are gathered here to celebrate today. Program Director, allow me to specifically address the family of the Negota family this evening. For without this family, we wouldn't have gathered here. So to the Negotas, you could have rejected our call 5 years ago when we proposed to have this lecture about our grandfather, father, uncle, and brother. But you did not. Instead, you welcomed us, have been working with us ever since. We thank you for that. We are indebted to you for borrowing us Mr. Negota during his lifetime, and for continuing to borrow us and also making sure that we can be able to celebrate him like we do today. Truly, words fails us, but I want you to receive our sincere, heartfelt gratitude as the BMF. Ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed a great honor for me to stand before you this evening in an event of this nature, where we are honoring, celebrating the legacy of George Negota, the former president, as the program director has mentioned, of the BMF from 1984 until 1986. It is especially humbling for me as the president of the same organization today, because on reflection, it hits me that had it not been of the vision and the work of Mr. Negota, I would probably not be here as the president of the BMF. I say this because Mr. Negota is one of those who, during his presidency, ensured that the BMF broadened its reach, thereby establishing regional structures across the country. What I'm saying, for those who are not aware, the BMF at that time did not have branches and provinces like it does now. Previously, this organization has been only a Transvaal one, now Gauteng-based organization. But through the vision and the leadership of the men in whose name we have gathered here, the organization grew and spread to other parts of the country. We now have the BMF Limpopo, BMF Mpumalanga, and many other provincial branches because of the vision of Mr. Negota. This is supported by Dr. Ruel Khoza in his tribute about Mr. Negota. He makes mention of the fact that during the tenure of Mr. Negota as the president of the Black Management Forum, the organization grew in stature and the number of branches increased observably. I will further borrow from his writing piece as a tribute to his friend. Dr. Khoza goes on to say, I quote, George to me is epistomized the African in my dream. An African who is a master in his destiny. An African who has a vision. An African who is known for what he stands for. An African who is proudly moral being. An African who has integrity. An African who is able and competent. An African who leads a renaissance. An African who takes responsibility for his own actions. In you, I saw an African who, when he looks in the mirror, sees the hand of God. Close quote. As much as George epistomized all this in the eyes of Dr. Khoza, I want to challenge all of us seated here this evening and make a call to all of us to strive to keep the legacy of Mr. Negota alive. By being masters of our own destiny, by being visionaries, by being clear on what we stand for, by having integrity in all our dealings, by continuously acquiring knowledge and skill so we can be able to compete, and by taking responsibility for our action to a point where we will be looking out at ourselves in the mirror and be proud of having resemblance to the kind of a leader that he was. It is humbling to listen to people talk about Mr. George Negota with passion. You then realize how great a man he was, not only as a businessman, but as an academic and a family man. It also gives one pride to be associated with the organization that he was also associated with. One of his nieces, which I gave a call, I'm not gonna mention the name. One of his nieces has to say this about him. My uncle, as we affectionately used to call him, believed that a person rests when they depart from this world. He was a family man who loved family and people. He loved Gota people. My uncle was an intellect. He also loved education. So much that at some point, he got admitted in the hospital and he brought the books with himself at this hospital because he was busy with his PhD. Ladies and gentlemen, the niece I'm talking about forms part of the third generation in the family. This shows how accessible Mr. Negota was to everyone, regardless of his stature in the society. He remained humble and connected to his roots, one of the things that should not be taken away, which is a lesson that we learn from him. Lastly, but definitely not least, yesterday I had an engagement with one of the founders, Mr. Eric Mafuna. Unfortunately, he could not join us here today, but he had to say this about his friend, Dr. George Negota. Firstly, I acknowledge that, now this is Mr. Mafuna. I acknowledge that I knew and collaborated with Mr. Negota across various topics of matters of mutual respect and interest from the moment he joined the BMF. Mr. Negota proved his worth as he'd always be available to give his own viewpoint and position on challenges that flagging the organization was facing at the time, especially in relation to big business, business organizations, government leaders, governmental management that he was familiar with and worked with. In this way, his input and counsel proved beneficial, especially to a new organization that lacked visibility, track record, or reputation. Secondly, Mr. Negota was instrumental in opening doors for the new organizations with regard to securing corporate membership, especially within the large US-based business community. For instance, he facilitated an arrangement hereby the mobile engine agreed to fund certain developmental initiatives of the BMF. For example, secondment of one or two relatively senior managers within the BMF. This way, the organization benefited immensely as he was able to retain the invaluable services and experience of a well-connected and well-traveled first manager of the BMF, namely Mr. Christopher Molefe. Without Mr. Molefe's contribution and initiatives, the BMF would have not been in the position it finds itself today. The mobile company also volunteered to fund the role and position of our first office secretary, Miss Lydia. Her last name escapes me momentarily. So Lydia, maybe Mr. Begi will remember what is the surname of Lydia. Silo, yes. I will remind him. Lydia served the BMF for multiple terms or years and thus contributed to the organization, enjoying a priority relative stability and modest growth. Subject to correction, the BMF secretary was later elevated to a position of managing director. I believe after departure of Chris Molefe, it was always befondling me whenever the organization celebrates its stalwarts. And other role players, people like Chris and Lydia, are seldomly remembered. It's a task to us that we must go back and remember them. Third, George Negota worked well across diverse stakeholders and role players within and without the BMF organization. In good time, Mr. Negota was elected to the position of BMF President, if my memory serves me well. He also was readily accessible and worked well with incoming generations of members. Most importantly, he was well placed to guide new members around some of the challenges that were impacting the development or progress of young people at the time. Fourth, Mr. Negota used his political connections and influence into the high offices of leaders, including President Mbeki, then Minister J.Z. Zuma, and some of the other senior officials to position the BMF role and objective against the governmental priority and other challenges. Most importantly, like Dr. Ruel Khoza, Mr. Negota was one of the members that was always available to serve the organization regardless of the position or role in the leadership stakes. Fifth or last, I personally valued Mr. Negota's input and advice in my position and rose as founding president. A budding consultant and contributor in the area of economic development, especially within provincial government departments and agencies. More specifically, I was persuaded to join the Northern Province Development Corporation, where we worked together with several leaders and members of the BMF. Should I add that throughout his life and work, George Negota always took ample care to minimize conflict, misunderstanding, and the championing of self-serving causes. To this end, I remain indebted to him for teaching us to minimize, even completely avoid getting roped its exclusionary project whose racist, ethnic, tribal affiliations or motives remained hidden behind the pursuit of democratic initiatives and such like. Since his passing, I have occasionally thought of reaching out to him. The way we used to simply find out how things are going in our various life and work roles. With George, it was well-established practice that good friendship are not and should not be judged by how frequent the partners get to meet and see each other. It was during times like this, George will rock up early, either at my office or home, to alert me about a matter of private and personal importance. Sad to say that this happens especially when a mutual colleague the late Josias Ntwanwani, is the one, right? Was in real bad shape. George warned me to go see the man before it was too late. The second and last time he repeated this was when he called to tell me he didn't think he'll. I promised to go visit him. Sad to say, I failed to go to see him. I just didn't have the heart to visit him on his deathbed, almost literally. I always wanted to retain the good memories we shared while we were both alive and going after business opportunities. And that's how I still remember him. That any day he could be dropping by my office and texting to tip me about matters of mutual interest. Indeed, George was a selfless individual who was prepared to jump into help wherever he believed the cause was a noble one. These are the words from our founding president, Mr. Eric Mafona. I was reading verbatim from the piece of writing he sent me yesterday. I just wanted to read it word by word because I did not want to distort what he was saying. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 5th George Negota Manda Lecture.
You see that thing of being short? Now we have to readjust. But thank you so much, President Mpomotse. You know, with what was shared right now, it just reminded me of a saying by John C. Maxwell, and I think it ties in very well with what was shared by the President just now, that leadership is not about titles, positions, or even flow charts. It is about one's life influencing another. And that is testament to what we are doing here this evening. It is testament to the lecture that we are attending this evening. When the BMF talks about developing managerial leadership, to me, especially coming from the speech we just heard right now, that speaks to personal development, and it leads to societal impact. So it's very clear with the life that has just been explained and just been shared this evening, where we see those elements of personal development, where we see those elements of societal impact, and that strong foundation, again, I will repeat, being put. And I think also very important for us to understand that what good leadership does when it's developed to us at an individual level is that it gives us that desire to be better, to do better, and to also create that environment where we are able to create that impact that creates better environments in societies. Now, the next part that we are moving to, we are going to be hearing from our keynote speaker this evening, and the focus is going to be on leadership and socio-economic transformation in the spirit of George Negota. Just to introduce the speaker coming on stage this evening, the speaker is accomplished and an accomplished business leader with diverse experience acquired over 32 years overall, 26 of which he's been in executive and C-suite roles in the public as well as the private sector. He is the immediate past non-executive chairman of Nedbank. His term concluded on the 2nd of June 2023, and until Monday, the 30th of October 2023, he was the chairman of ESCOM Board of Directors after a short term of 12 months. Currently, the chairman of Epitome Investments, as well as Epitome Archetypes. Epitome Investment is Family Investment Holdings Company, further holds equity interest in LPI, Lion Pride Investment, and LRMG, Pty Ltd. He further serves as the non-executive director on boards of Toronto and New York listed Platinum Group Metals and lead independent director of the board of Jay-Z listed Invicta Holdings Limited. He holds a Bachelor of Admin, a B.Admin from UniZulu, a B.Admin honors from University of Pretoria, Executive Development Program, as well as from 2000, Kellogg School of Management and Postgraduate Diploma, Retailing Management, University of Stirling in 2008. Again, you see those elements we spoke of earlier on, the issue of personal development, of societal impact. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm round of applause as we welcome to the stage the keynote speaker, Mpho Makwana.
Ke a le tamisha le perile jambo ndi madekwa. I don't see anybody to say goeienaand to. Good evening. Program Director Mpho and all distinguished guests, the Negota family that we met earlier, leaders of the Black Management Forum, stalwart, my former boss, my mentor, past president of the BMF, Sotobe, Mr. Begisbia, the president of the BMF, who just came and spoke before me, another Mpho Mutsei, the managing director of the BMF, Lot Ndlovu Jr., Monde Lot Ndlovu. I hope, MD, you followed clearly what I told you Senior Lot used to do. I didn't see you with yellow NetBank notes earlier in the holding room. The mantra is, if you're the managing director of the BMF and you happen to have a name called Lot Ndlovu amongst your names, is you must carry yellow Netcore notepads. I was deeply humbled when I was asked to be here this evening on my home province, on home soil, to come and pay tribute to a giant of this province, Annual George Negota. Let me start off by acknowledging the important role that the BMF has played over the last 48 years, especially because those of you who have buttoned up your collars, chances are I'm going to make you hot under the collar this evening, because the tradition of the BMF that I grew up in when I was involved with the BMF was that it was a tradition of saying things as they are, even if you are later likely to be accused of being brutally honest. It was in the spirit of ensuring that we drove the best out of each other. The particular context I wish to pay tribute to Bokhodzi Negota on, I didn't know what the BMF president was going to say, but something told me that I shouldn't come here and tell you about his past. Because the moment it became known that I was going to speak here, a few of his former comrades from TEFLOP, when they were in the Black Consciousness student movement together, also wrote me similar notes that you received from Bokhodzi Mafuna, saying I must not forget to say he used to do this at varsity, he used to be like this as a Black Conscious activist. But if I look back to 1991, And probably this will be one of few moments where I look back. If I look back to 1991, there was a very important occasion which was championed by his successor, the lion that used to roar in rooms, Don Mkonas. When the Black Management Forum brought together the economics departments of the former liberation movements under trees in the bush at Mopani. And in 1991, a document was produced known as the Mopani Record of Understanding on economic transformation and empowerment. Not black economic, not just economic empowerment and transformation. And one of the things that used to be cited a lot, which is perhaps where I will start, but perhaps before I go there, let me say that the theme that I chose over and above the broader theme I was given was to provoke you tonight in the name of George Manda Negota, was to provoke you tonight to say, the future is the only place worth leading to. That is the core of my message tonight. I feel that as black people, given that this room is 100% black, we spend a lot of time looking to the past. We spend a lot of time looking to how things used to be. And often we forget that the place where we're going to spend most of our lives in is this place called the future. And that is the only place worth leading people to. Also, one of the first CEOs of our times in 1996, judging by the color of the hair and the age group, in the main, most people will not know this, but there used to be a company called National Sorghum Breweries. It was the first time that black people made an attempt to take on SA breweries. The then CEO, Professor Mahale Mahanyele, in 1996 wrote his opening statement in that company's annual report. And I quote, he said, "You don't know where you're going if you don't know where you come from. Worst if you've forgotten where you've come from." So I think I must thank the President for having reminded us where we've come from. I'll occasionally be challenging you to test whether you remember where we come from. But I do need to say most of my time I'm going to spend looking ahead. We are first and foremost citizens and members of communities ahead of our pursuit of careers as business persons, as executives, or as career directors on boards. However, for me, I always cherish the ideal of plowback and contribution. Rather than be an armchair critic, my sense of duty propels me to make a positive contribution, no matter how modest. And it is in this spirit that a lot of people say if you go to an SOC to contribute, you run the risk of throwing your career down the drain. But for me, I believe all of us as managers, as leaders, need to acknowledge and realize that serving one's country in this manner is in keeping with what we were inspired to embrace by Bo Kodzi Eric Mafuna, Bo Kodzi George Negota, my former bosses, Maduke, Lotin Ndlovu, Begisbia, and that is that we lift as we rise. 5 simple words that put together, when you string them together, they convey a profound message and a profound call to duty. It's important that if we are to celebrate these legends that gave us the Black Management Forum, largely baby boomers that met in Soweto at someone's house in Diepkloof Extension in 1976, that we realize that if you go through life, whether as an executive, as a manager, as a professional, and you're not centered in your sense of life purpose, you become that person that Professor Mahanyel was talking about. Because it will end up being a case of any road leads you anywhere. And so for me, my life purpose is to be a trusted counselor to world-class leaders who seek to leave the world better than they found it. And tonight, I wish you to ask yourself, as my first order of business tonight, why are you here on earth? And generally, when people come to me saying, oh, please, can you be my coach? That's where the conversation starts. Some I don't get to see again, which is well and good. Because if you're not in a position to let us start there, there are tools that I use that I know of that help you answer that question. But if we don't start there, there's no point starting. And if we want this Black Management Forum to grow from strength to strength, all of you who are here as managers, as aspirant managers, as members of the BMF, have to be purposeful. The reason we had the BMF is that men and women gathered in 1976 purposefully to ensure that they create a home for Black managers who, when they entered corporates, were made to feel like pariahs in their own home economy. It just didn't happen. Yes, there were frustrations, but there was a sense of purpose. And so if you are to take the baton forward from where those legends left, you've got to be purposeful. And so as I implore you to be purposeful, in the footsteps of George Negota, who, in my view, was that sort of leader who wanted to leave the world better than he found it, and that he did. Let's just first start by answering the question of who is a leader. I have come across many definitions of leadership in my short career of 33 years. But the one that resonates the most with me, that I've always carried with me, is the one I came across in 1999 by Joel Barker, who says that a leader is someone you choose to follow to a place that you wouldn't go by yourself. The reason you wouldn't go by yourself is because this place that I'm saying is the future worth leading to, is fraught with complexity and uncertainty. And so most of us, rather than deal with that, rather than be the one in the front charting the path, would rather stay safe and be a follower. And so as a leader, you must know that those people that choose to follow you, you earn their right to follow you if you help navigate key uncertainties and key complexities and simplify things for those who look to you for leadership. But we have to say upfront that this uncertainty is relative. The relative uncertainty of 1976, at that time, of course, George Negota would not have been a manager yet. He was he was at the tender age of 25 when the BMF was formed. Only 8 years later, in his 30s, to become its president. So for those of us who passed this age milestone, perhaps it suggests we should forget about ever becoming presidents of the BMF. But if we talk about frontiers of leadership is the next thing to conquer. The frontier of leadership at the time that the cohort of Mafuna, Negota, Sibesho, Mkonazi and others, I'm talking about the first 4 or 5 presidents, was in a context when there was a tension point also between those of us who saw ourselves as charterists and them as black conscious leaders. We call them Amazimzim. Because a lot of their student movements, youth movements had Zims in it, Azasim, Azaso, and so on. And in the 80s, when I got to university, I refused to be a member of the student chapter of the BMF. Don Mkonazi used to come to the university I share as an alma mater with Babu Sbir. And I remember we used to have these debates, him and people like Bo, who inspired me, like Bo Perfect Malimela, who's one of the first black persons to set up a consulting firm that I know of. We used to debate this thing of non-racialism, non-sexism, and the Freedom Charter versus black consciousness. Little did I know that soon after graduating, 3 years later, I would become an employee of the organization, reporting to Lawton Ndlovu. But the key thing is that today, in 2024, we're celebrating their legacy as a generation of baby boomers. And as you can see, among those that lead you today, there's Gen Ys, and perhaps here and there a Gen Xer. And so we need to step back and ask ourselves, what would they have done differently today if they were standing here in 2024 trying to lead the BMF to conquer the next frontiers? And so my sense is that they did what they did as contributive citizens, and I'll come to this in a bit of detail. The notion of contributive citizenship is what has spurred me over the years to contribute whenever I'm asked to come to the fore to contribute. And my definition of contributive citizenship is that it refers to actively participating in the betterment of one's community or country. It involves contributing time, skills, and resources for the greater good. And contributive citizens often engage in volunteering and community service or other forms of civic participation to address social issues and promote positive change. I've been challenged by many to pen my life experiences into a book. And so this year, 2024, which was largely a semi-sabbatical year for me, I've had that opportunity to pen thoughts to paper. And hopefully in mid-25, that book on contributive citizenship will hit the shelves. South Africa, like many countries in the world, is going through complex, unprecedented change as well as a generational change of guard. If Annual George Negota was still with us, he would be a 71-year-old baby boomer. And alongside with his fellow baby boomers, he would have had to concede to a more energetic and younger set of leaders, such as Gen Xers and Gen Y leaders that are now at the forefront of the work of the Black Management Forum. It is my humble submission that a fitting tribute to these baby boomers that founded the BMF in 1976 needs to be driven by us embracing a more deliberate model of contributive citizenship. There are several benefits of being a contributive citizen. Firstly, if I could just point out a handful of these that I believe could assist us in advancing a climate of a more contributive professional sector, especially given that your calling as BMF is about transformational leadership and truth well told to economic power. First benefit of contributive citizenship is personal growth. And that has been the reason why most people join the BMF over the years. Because engaging in acts of contribution allows individuals to develop new skills, to expand their knowledge, and gain valuable experiences. Can also boost self-confidence and self-esteem. You know, there used to be this advert from government saying, how do you expect to develop a sense of personal growth if you don't interact in a forum of this nature? Secondly, contributive citizenship has the benefit of creating social cohesion, because being involved in community activities such as the BMF provides opportunities to connect with like-minded individuals, build relationships, and foster a sense of belonging. Especially if you work in organizations as in the private sector, where historically, when you were a black person, you were like an intruder in the boardroom. And this social connection can therefore enhance overall well-being and reduce feelings of isolation. And I'll come back to this more in depth shortly. Thirdly, it provides a platform for impact and fulfillment, contributing to the betterment of one's community and also the betterment of others, can have a positive impact on others' lives and your life as well. It provides a sense of purpose and fulfillment, knowing that you're making a difference, whether on a small or large scale. The fourth benefit is learning and awareness. Through active participation, contributive citizens gain a deep understanding of social issues, cultural diversity, and the needs of their community. This knowledge can lead to increased empathy, tolerance, and a more informed perspective on social changes. The first tool I wish to share with you this evening, in the spirit of looking ahead, is this book that was written by Simon Arnold, entitled The Good Country Equation. Simon Arnold, in my view, gives organizations such as the BMF a useful framework on how to advance contribution. This evening, I'd like us to reflect on this important role that the BMF should play through the lens of Simon Arnold's work on what makes a country a good country, which is also encapsulated in his book, The Good Country Equation, How We Can Repair the World in One Generation. Simon rose to fame 20 years ago or so and has been regarded as a country competitiveness strategist and an advisor to many heads of state. Many moons ago, I had the privilege of serving as a trustee during the tenure of both President Mbeki, later President Zuma, on the board of Brand South Africa. And that's where one came across his work for the first time through what was called the Good Country Index. And so the Good Country Equation takes it a little closer to the boardroom, which is the field of play where the BMF finds itself in. The index of the Good Country Equation has got 6 factors, among 2 of which are about human capital and leadership development, which again is down the alley of the Black Management Forum's focus area. Unlike the World Economic Forum's and global competitive reports of the IMD, the focus here is about how, as a player, be it as an individual player, be it as an organization like the BMF, how you can position your country relative to its contribution to global thought leadership. The second dimension I think I would like to spend more time on, relative to this perspective, is also how we should understand the different roles that different generations now have to play in the form of Gen Xers, millennia, and among the student chapter members, we've got members of the Alpha generation. These three generations are now, the Gen Xers mostly seem to be shy, but they're actually now the elders of society in the active economy, not as pensioners, but as active members in the economy. And so BMF has to really reflect on how to claim fair share of South Africa's good country equation. Developing managerial capacity for Southern Africa, in my view, and I've taken the managing director to task on this, it can be that when I reported to his father, we were developing managerial capacity for Southern Africa, and that today he's the MD and we're still developing managerial capacity for Southern Africa. There's something wrong. 48 years on, we're still developing managerial capacity. There's something we need to change on this quest of shaping the new country equation. And so we need to, in my view, as you confront this uncomfortable question, perhaps, President, let's proactively provide a platform of an economic umkhabulo on the socio-economic context of the state of our country relative to other countries in this volatile geopolitical environment. But in making your fair share of contribution, the other place that I always turn to for inspiration is Strauss and Howe, who have been working on an 80-year trajectory of starting generations. So you will see that in the diagram that I whisked past quickly, they looked at generations, because in the US there's documented history, going centuries and centuries ago. In South Africa and elsewhere in the world, we're piggybacking on their generational theory model, but with limited documented history of which leader achieved what in what generation. And so I think that we need to be investing in this as BMF, looking at the different generations that shaped this field of play of economic transformation, of managerial leadership, of organizational transformation. Because by learning in depth, people doing master's dissertations on it, people doing PhD theses on it, and being spurred on by the BMF, we will get to know the pitfalls they went through and know what not to repeat in this generation and know what to piggyback on as we look ahead to the future, this place that is the only place worth leading to. And so as you see there, it says history creates generations, and new generations create new history. And the opportunity now is to create new BMF history as the new generation of BMF cadres and BMF leaders. But as I move forward now to beginning to make you feel hot under the collar, in the midst of the noise that we've had over a few years on the notion of corruption and state capture, I always drew as my source of analysis using my days as a student of politics at Ongoy, and dusted off my books that were written by David Easton, the founder of political science, and looked at a model he developed called the political system. The political system was a simple model that said society works on inputs from society. These inputs get pulled out by a people called political parties. They assess the needs, they write manifestos, and then when they are voted in, they become government. They use three arms of government, the judiciary, the executive, and the legislature, and they produce policies and legislature, and then the circle just goes inputs, outputs, inputs, outputs. But I think when I looked at it, I realized that actually, as a country, in my humble opinion, we made a mistake. We made a mistake by calling state capture state capture. We made a mistake by treating it as if though it was a uniquely South African phenomenon. A greater analysis of the political system model shows that when you overlay it with some of the challenges we face today, so one term that strategists, the field of profession that I also grew up in, as we were building up towards the pre-pandemic era, they were beginning to be talk about, because remember they used to say we lead and govern in the VUCA environment, which was an acronym, in case you haven't heard it before, I'll just repeat, for volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous environment in which strategic leadership has to occur. They already said we were leading in an environment of polycrisis. So polycrisis means as you solve this crisis, another one pops up. As you solve this one, another pops up. And largely when you go deeper, then you realize, and that's where my contributive citizenship comes in, there's actually a tension point between those who are extractive, they just want to draw, and self-enrich, and those that seek to contribute. So the extractors that propel extractive citizenship are called kleptocrats. If you want to know why a government went into the Middle East to fight a war and find weapons of mass destruction that didn't exist, it's because the oil kleptocrats told them so. And if there are any persons from the governing party, which is my political home, I'm going to put you hot under the collar tonight and say, truth be told, we have a government of national unity today because the kleptocrats who fund the governing party, the DA, and the IFP, because those were the three people we always knew last year this time were talking. They told them, thou shalt work together because we need a stable economy. But of course, someone, as we all have advised us, said, no, you see, you can't just be the three of you. It will otherwise be a sellout position. Let's say it's a multi-party government of national unity. Then invite a few minority parties so that you remind us of 1994. But if you look, there's a website you must visit. It's a public website. It's called myvotecounts.org. It publishes full details, save for two people. It publishes who funds who. There are some people who don't want us to know who funds them. They wear red colors. There are some people who wear green colors. They also don't want us to know who funds them. But everybody else funding is disclosed. And when you connect the dots as who are the most powerful funders, you will see that these big three parties have a set of kleptocrats in common. So had we dealt with this as a global issue of kleptocracy, we would have probably pinned down the Guptas much quicker than we could have, because we have started and looked at the cobweb of kleptocrats that they in turn were connected with, and extraditing them should have been easier, quicker than currently is. There are many questions that we would have asked the people that had to answer before the commission that we could have asked differently if we knew that we were dealing with a global system of extractiveness, of corruption. So this then leads us to a point I'll make later about the right mindset that is key to solve the problems that face you appropriately. But for now, let me take the flip side of the coin of Joel Barker. He says a leader is someone you choose to follow. But he also says the job of a leader is to recognize and secure the future. The job of the chief executive is to be the chief growth officer. When you are there as a manager, as a junior manager in a department, you're a support system for a chief growth officer. The job of the managing director of the BMF is to be the chief growth officer of the BMF. The job of the president of the BMF is to be the chief champion of the growth of the BMF. Because that way you recognize and secure the future of the organization that you're leading. And so as managers going back to work tomorrow and day after tomorrow and day after tomorrow, appreciate this, that you add value if you, in your small role and in your bigger role, always figure out how am I contributing to the growth of our department. Because if the department grows, the division grows. If the division grows, the company grows. You're a chief contributor to the growth of the organization you work for. However, the VUCA environment was followed by COVID. The one biggest lesson from COVID for all of us as leaders and managers is this idea of a bunny environment. So when you lead, when you're shaping strategy, you're shaping it in a VUCA bunny world. Bunny is important for all of you to recognize that firstly, the B stands for brittle. COVID taught us that it doesn't matter whether I've got 10 rands in the bank and you've got 1 trillion rands. We have one thing in common. We're breakable. We are human. And so the brittle nature of leaders and the brittle nature of human beings was brought to the light, to the fore by COVID. The A of the bunny follows the B. It's for anxiety. Even today, the anxiety started firstly when you would go to work and find that when people used to come to work in cohorts of less than 100, you find someone in an area where you're working, tomorrow you come, they're not there. And tomorrow you come, they're not there, the next one. And people started wondering, am I next? Remember when we didn't know much about COVID? And so high levels of anxiety started feeding in and creeping in into the system. Some people who got COVID, even today, are living with symptoms and outcomes of long COVID. They continue to find themselves in environments of anxiety, unable to cope with pressure the way they would ordinarily have before 2020. And so that requires a certain type of leader and manager, the kind that the BMF grooms to have Ubuntu. It is much needed today. The N is for non-linear. COVID taught us very critically, which is why I say we must not spend too much time in the past. COVID taught us you cannot use last year's spreadsheet to succeed today. You had to think differently out of the box. And so in leadership, the biggest lesson is the past does not always predict the future. It teaches you about what happened for you to learn how to navigate today, but that's it. You can't drive a car moving forward with a rear view mirror. The I is incomprehensible. Takes us back to Joel Barker. Highly complex, highly uncertain, the environment we're living in. The other part of this is that there are certain leadership capabilities that are required of us as we now lead people today. Firstly, that the brittleness requires us as leaders to be champions of resilience. And there comes the P word again, to be purpose-driven. Because when you are purposeful, you give your mind focus. It helps you to regain that self-confidence we spoke about earlier. Because even when things are tough, you've got something to hold on to say, no, I'm pursuing this purpose. The anxiety requires something totally, totally different. It requires the kind of manager that the BMF is about. It requires that sense of ubuntu, compassion. But most importantly, in the younger years of BMF, when I was a champion in the BMF, and we were telling untransformed corporates to transform, we used to say we were about being brutally honest. But this time around, leaders must be brutally optimistic. Because people are, just look at the type of news we hear. You switch on the news, a 2-year-old child has died. You switch on the news, people have eaten halipirimi and they've passed on. Now we're in this period of activism against non-violence against women. Somehow it seems when this time comes, more new horrific acts come to the fore. So whether it's COVID, whether it's what's happening in the world of Donald J. Trump, whether it's the war in the Middle East, whether it's Russia, Ukraine, everything you read is depressing. And therefore, as leaders, the biggest task we have is to be brokers of optimism. So tone down. Rather than be brutally honest, start being brutally optimistic. Because you're dealing with a very touchy system of anxiety in the people you're leading and managing. The non-linearity requires us, firstly, to inspire people to be more agile, but it requires of us to be those champions of simplicity. You need to lead with simplicity. So if you juxtapose this with the tenure of George Negota, R1 rifles were pumping left, right, and center. There were yellow mellows around the country. Those of us who were students, we used to chant the spirit of no give up, the spirit of ungovernability. Then there was a state of emergency in his last year in office in 1986. So you can see that there were some levels of anxiety even there, but the depth thereof has just intensified in this time. So the paradigm with which his generation would have led the BMF then is totally different to the paradigm required today for this generation of managers to lead in your places of management and leading. So those of you who've heard me speak before, you'll forgive me, but you have to master this equation. Anywhere you are confronted by a challenge in your boardroom, in your department, wherever, even in your personal life, if you master this equation, you'll always come victorious on the other side. And that is to say, first, in every challenge that you face, test the quality of your assumption. Because the quality of your assumptions shape in a very natural way as a team, as a board of the BMF, as the MANCO, as whoever, shapes the quality of conversations that you'll have with each other. And the quality of conversation entrenches the quality of your thinking. And that is called a paradigm. So if you want to shift paradigms, you must shift assumptions, because then you shift quality of conversation, you enrich the quality of thinking. So that is where the power of transformation is in terms of diversity. Wherever you are, I heard you talking about social media. I had a slide on it and I decided I wasn't going to use it, but because you spoke about it. A lot of you, a lot of us, but I will say a lot of you because I've cured myself of this. I challenge you now, look at your Facebook page. Whether you've got 200 friends, whether you've got 1,000 friends, chances are, and I can bet 2 rands, I've got 2 rands in my pocket. Chances are 90% of your network are people you grew up with, If you're from Seshego, you went to Seshego High or Madikana or wherever with. Are people you went to varsity with? Are people you hang out with in your social work environment? So what is the point? What is the point? Because you are defeating the whole purpose of social networking. Social networking is based on a principle called 6 degrees of separation. It says that if you wanted to have one-on-one with President Ramaphosa, it is possible. You are 6 degrees removed from him. Because there's someone you know who knows someone who knows someone who knows someone who can make it possible, provided you know how to network. But then if your social media page or Facebook has got the same people in a network, how are you going to get to Ramaphosa? If your social page is the same people you hang out with, how are you going to land that good job? Because the whole point of networking is to attract people who are different to you, who tell you things you don't know. So for you to be an effective manager in these times that we live in, for you to ensure that the BMF that George Negota had going to build branches and regional structures for thrives, you've got today to think differently and ensure that you don't have assumptions that are based on homogeneous thinking. Because then the quality of conversations that you'll have with yourself and other people will be different. And therefore, your paradigm will be enriched. So go out of your way. If go out of your way to have friends who come from Thohoyandou, from Giyani, from where I studied in Mpangeni, KwaZulu, so that you broaden your horizon. I mean, I never get this. You grow up in Seshego, you go to TEFLOP, you do your bachelor's, you do your honors, you do your master's, you do your PhD. Our neighbors in Nirvana say, what kind? What kind you go to university for? You have to broaden your horizons. And so that way you broaden your thinking. I've got 2 slides left, President, in case I'm overstaying my welcome. Now, another perhaps confusing term. Polycrisis, many crises. Now there's a new word called perma-crisis. You're constantly leading in an environment of permanent crises. And so it means that, President and MD, we need a BMF program. In our times with Abu Babu Spear, we used to have an association with USALEP, for instance, where we sent people to various parts of the world to learn about how to be non-executive directors. Now, I think firstly, my mantra to this organization, to the BBC and a few other black organizations is that we are failing if we don't recognize that firstly, black management struggles are global. In the UK, there's an equivalent of the BMF looking after black management interests. In the US, the Black Caucus has got a chapter that looks after management issues alongside black enterprise. Francophone in France, there's black people, French-speaking, that relate to Francophone Africa that have a forum. The problem is that we forget that if I'm white and I'm a member of ISEC, or I'm a member of the popular one that you become a member of before you're 40, Young Presidents Organization, and many others. In those forums, I get given a global perspective. But in the BMF, we rob ourselves, we get bogged down with a local perspective. And we find that these managers that are from multinationals that manage us in the companies we work for, they look at our behavior, they think, no, but I've seen this in France. with so-and-so who's black and speaks French. I've seen this in the UK, and so on and so on. Because one of the things that unwittingly most of us benefited under apartheid, apartheid used to have this notion of perpetual training. Some of us got sent to Fort Worth headquarters, some would be sent by IBM and this and the other. We were, even though we were being perpetually trained, we were given global exposure. And we could build networks with fellow black people elsewhere in the world. So I think the perma-crisis, the poly-crisis say to us, let's figure out how to build global tentacles as an organization. But most importantly, if you look at this histogram, it looks at South Africa in the future, and it shows that come 2050, the turquoise blue color that is thick in the middle is the percentage of South Africans that would have had a secondary education. And the dark blue on the sides is the percentage of South Africans that would have had a tertiary education. And we will still have in the red people who would have no education. And the yellow-orange flame color is those that will be in primary. So I don't know where you're going to draw your future managers from as members of the BMF by 2050. So while I gave a hard time about developing managerial capacity, the problem is when I went to school, if you got E, it was fail. You had to do a thing called an agrotard at university, or you repeated a standard. Today they say, no, good for effort. Those are your future members. Those are future members of the Black Management Forum. Those are the future people who will be managing our economy. So something has to be done now, because remember, the future is where you're going to be. We're in 2024. If you're in your 20s, in 2050 is only 26 years away. It's not a century. Before you, with a blink of an eye, they'll be sitting next to you at your desk. You will be their boss. It's just something I'm putting it out there, as they say, in the universe. And with this level of qualification, we're going to be expected to deal with complex global issues. Climate change, geopolitics that are constantly complex. South Africa makes many mistakes in its geopolitical engagements. I always used to say to our leaders, how do you go to China as a country of 60 million people and you think you can bargain with them with a market of 2 billion people? You should be going as a continent of 1 billion people at least. So these are all things, that complexities that we have to deal with at country level, because as BMF, these are important inputs you must give inputs to. BMF gave inputs to key policy areas historically. I'm not sure if you're still doing it. I don't hear much about that thought leadership. And I'm raising these issues because rather than reminisce on what George Negota used to do, it is in your hands. It is up to you to grasp this future and do something about it today, because you are going to be living with it in the future. So then, what can I leave you with? What does the manager of the future look like? When the BMF turns 50 in 2026 and beyond, successful management will require, firstly, that a manager is data-centric. Big environments are all about big data. Governments are all about big data. You've got to appreciate how data works, the patterns, how to discern meaning out of data. Now, I don't know how one does that with an E in maths. The manager of the future has to be high-tech, high-touch. Emotional intelligence is central to how you lead. By the way, I also think you must think ahead to this 2050. You're going to have a challenge, those of you who will be leading organizations then. There will be, for the first time, almost the same amount of robots as there is the same amount of living human beings. Yes, in this country. You'll be leading a department, half of the team will be robots, half of the team will be human beings. And how do you deal with this? Something we need to still think critically about today. When we're developing managerial capacity, we're developing managerial capacity for that sort of era. We need to evolve from being systems thinkers. Systems thinking is a thing that evolved in the late 80s, 90s. We used to be told you must be system thinker. Now we no longer need system thinkers. We need system shifters. Disrupting patterns that exist with new patterns and new ways of doing things. From shareholder value to maximizing stakeholder value, already it is happening with ESG. You can't just say, I'm here in the business of making profit, because you leave out a whole host of people that can come and mess up your share price tomorrow. The manager of the future is high-tech, high knowledge, constantly sharpening the sword. And I don't mean having PhDs, and I don't mean all of us have to have PhDs. Do that course on artificial intelligence. Do that course on data interpretation. Do that course on analytics, because these are the skill sets of the future. As I speak to you now, 10 jobs are becoming redundant because they're being overtaken by technology. So you've got to constantly be knowledgeable. Say, how am I better than I was yesterday? You have to be high-tech, high-local. You have to ensure that where you lead, you're both globally competitive and locally relevant, while at the same time, there's this notion of I'm born before computers, forget about it. This notion of I'm from Muleji, there was no computer in my class, forget about it. What are you doing now to familiarize yourself with the technology that is available at your disposal? A lot of you have got cell phones, but you hardly use their maximum potential. If it's not for cell phone, for selfies, WhatsApp status, calling and emailing, that's it. Yet this thing can do 1,000 more than you're using it for. You can even attend a whole MBA program on this thing and finish and graduate. So let's really open our eyes and not constantly be consumers of what other people tell us to consume. And finally, high-tech, high-futuristic. These are the 8 skill sets that I think every manager in this room and every aspirant manager in this room must think about if you want to compete in the future and earn a good living. It starts with these 8 things. Just to provoke you further, you have to read a lot. But there's this network that I think we should study as BMF. It's called more than 85 broads. It reminds me of the story of the BMF. So broads, as you know, in the US, it's slang for women. Or chick, they say, I met a broad, blah, blah, blah. So 85 women came together, a bit like the BMF founders of 76, worried that they were just seen as broads in the boardroom. And the difference with this one, but it speaks to some of the points I was saying earlier, is that these 85 women said, no, I'm not satisfied with just the 85 of us in the room. So like BMF, they created local branches, they call them chapters. But they challenged every woman to bring a foreign broad. So if from the US, bring a Russian broad or a Mexican broad and so on, Today, they exist in 90 countries, and they continue to advance the work. So they published this book as a tool for them to find one another. They have a digital platform called More Than 85 Broads. Any woman in this room concerned about breaking the glass ceiling should read this book. It's something that I think the BMF should really go and study and emulate as a case study of how to take positive contribution in the spirit of developing managerial capacity from a localized to a globalized network that has a huge impact. And hence I'm saying the struggles of black managers are not South African only. They are a global struggle. President, I've already overstayed the welcome in terms of the time that you assigned me to, so let me stop here and express my deep gratitude that I was invited to, together with the Negota family, share a tribute to Negota. I hope that wherever he is, if he can see what I was saying, he feels I stretched you enough. Because every time I sat with him, he left me stretched, and I think I also left him stretched. The law firm in Randburg was not far from my office at some point, and we used to exchange coffee. One of my cousins, Lohotlo Moshoko, worked with him, and we used to also meet at home and exchange a few brutal exchanges, intellectual exchanges. And they always ended with, it has to end with our generation. You can't have the next generation lamenting the same issues. And hence today I'm challenging you to have more of a futuristic mindset rather than constantly looking behind. Thank you so much.
That deserves another round of applause. It does. Thank you. You may take your seats. Thank you so much. Sure, where does one begin? What do you say after that? You know, usually I pride myself whenever I get to facilitate conversations and MC events. I pride myself in being time conscious. It's actually one of the selling points that I put forward when my discussions to say, listen, how long is your program? Is it in the evening? We'll be done by this time. But today I diverted. I was glued on my seat. I could not even raise. Usually I am the kind of MC I give ahead of the speaker coming to the front. I don't even know why I didn't do it today. I give, that disclaimer to say, be aware that you have this amount of time. And when you see me stand up, be aware that I am giving you a heads up for you to round it off. And I sat there in my chair looking at the time, and I said to myself, I will have a discussion with the BMF President afterwards. I will account. It's okay, I will account. So, so much has been said. But I was smiling to myself, Kere, there's this saying, we were warned to say we're going to be hot under the collar when the speech started. But I listened towards the end, as you are going to go forward. As much as we talked about being brutally honest, because that was a very honest speech, wasn't it? Very honest. But towards the end, we were told to be brutally optimistic, weren't we? To say as much as the truth was shared and all of those, for us to be optimistic. And I hope we'll get signed copies of Contributive Citizenship next year, June, we were told. I made a follow on LinkedIn. I'm going to be messaging, reminding, June, 2025, where's my signed copy? I get a letter to Facebook. So na kile LinkedIn ka fitla ka ba follower. So go sasa ga ke romela message ba ska ba mpetha ka moya kere Do I have a testimony in the house? Lengwe ke na le hlatsi. And I ka mpetha ka moya, ke tlo report. I'm going to come here and report and say, ba mpetha ka moya ko LinkedIn. Mara ba re le re kgaogane le bakgotsi ba Facebook ba seshego. Seshego. So thank you so very much. We really appreciate it. There is the owner of the car. I'm not sure if you were able to go and attend to your car. Registration 333 XXL. We're told that the top is down. It was about to rain. So I hope you were able to attend to it. If not, please make your way outside. The rain was threatening, so just attend to that. Let me also take this time to thank and appreciate and acknowledge the sponsors that made this evening available. CIRA, the Private Security Industry Regulatory Authority. If you can have a round of applause because they made this evening possible. We are going to be watching a video before we get remarks from the Negota family. This is a BMF tribute to Annual George Negota in the format of a video. Maybe let me just check with our sound guys if the video is ready to be played. We are going to be having that now. Did you take a note of the books that were put up as the video is ready? Did you do that? I hope you did. Took pictures or took down. I was actually glad to see the purpose-driven life on the, because I remembered University 2002, Rick Warren, and you were all there, going through purpose-driven life, and I know that it has been revised. It's on the list, as have been other books as well. So let's take advantage of that and read. Are we ready with the video? Sure. All right. Ntate Betuel Malenga with remarks from the Negota family. A warm round of applause, please, as he comes to the front.
Program Director, President, Guest Speaker, all protocol observed, good evening. We as the Negota family, we feel highly honored and humbled by this gesture. When the 7th of May 2017 dawned, and that was the demise of our brother George Negota, we thought the giant, who is larger than life, he will never be remembered. We sat as a family and said, we must have memorial lecture of him. Out of the blue, God sent servants. The BMF came to us and said, we will honor George every year, looking back at what he has done. George was a humble person. George came from a very humble and is a self-taught person. George didn't do matric. I was young. I think also I ended up doing what we call grade 10 and became a teacher. And because he brought me up, every time when we studied, when he was still working at Mobile, he will come and take me, my brother, let's go and read. He bought me a big foolscap where I must write English meanings. Then what we learned as the Negota family, George taught us that determination and focus can make you reach high. It's not that people will say we don't have money, we don't have what. But George taught us that let us be determined and say, if you want to say, I want to become this, you will be that. George didn't do these things in Joburg only. George loved his people. He also developed entrepreneurs around our villages. Today, I want to acknowledge one of the people that he brought up, that he introduced them to entrepreneurship, I see Mr. Eric Chipota. Can you rise so that people can see you? George will say to us, you see, I got this opportunity. You see, you know better well, what must we do? I said, I don't know, my brother. So no, we start giving opportunities to those people who never drink tea. That was, he will ask me, but is that boy that wants the job, where does he come from? So if you tell him where he comes from, that one is like, you're going to get happy luck. Because when he assisted people, he won't assist you if you're not qualified. Even myself, even if I say I want to say, hey, but well, what do you have so that I can defend myself when I've given you this opportunity? So this family of Negota has been put on the map, in the world map, by George. And most of us, we appreciate that you are holding the baton and the flag of the Negota family high. We want to say to you, keep on doing that, not only to the Negota family, to all leaders that have fought for this country. I thank you, Program Director.
Thank you. And I'm going to call right now for the vote of thanks. BMF Managing Director, Ndademonde Ndlovu, would you come to the front for the vote of thanks?
A very good evening to you all, ladies and gentlemen. A very good evening to you all, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. All right, that's much better, much better. I've deliberately brought this token of appreciation up instead of putting it on a chair somewhere because it can be dangerous if I get up and speak. So it's cautioning me, it's holding me together so that I just get straight to the point, so that I don't stand between ourselves and dinner, also looking at the time. So thank you very much. Firstly, as we conduct this vote of thanks to the Negota family for borrowing us, Ubabu George Negota, in a special way. We know that he's a product of his family, product of his community, and everything that he was is a direct result and in proportion to what he was taught because of the family. And so we don't take families lightly in the BMF because we know you are the backbone, you are the anchor of all our stalwarts and what they were able to do. The other thing about the family as well, which is something that one has begun to pick up by studying the stalwarts, is also the family structure which they came from. The families, in particular their wives, allowed them to become what they wanted. In other words, they didn't hold them back. They allowed them to run. So that's something that is a very important point, that the families that the stalwarts come from did not hold them back. Imagine if the family of Negota and many others held them back, we would not have the BMF as we have it today. So we are grateful for the family structures that understood the context in which they found themselves in and the context that required a particular response from the leadership and allowed them, freed them, in other words, for them to run as far as they wanted to run. And today we have the BMF in its current shape and form. So we thank the family in a very special and dedicated way. We also like to thank the BMF leadership, President, Provincial Chairperson, Polokwane leadership that's here. We're in your territory, even though we have descended as national, but we're in your territory. So thank you very much. Thank you, President, for allowing this national event to descend once again in this province. And it is deliberate that it's in this province. Maybe not. Let me challenge and say maybe at some point we need to take the lecture to another province, because Babu George Negota, as much as this is his hometown, but he was national as well. So maybe it's something that we need to think about as well going forward. So we thank the leadership of the BMF for ensuring that this lecture takes place as we reflect on where we are and where we must be. So thank you very much to the BMF leadership at large. Thank you very much to the BMF at large. Right. It's a vote of thanks. So if you don't clap hands, I can, like I said, it's dangerous for me to be on a podium. So I'm trying to help myself. We also have in our midst as well the BMF stalwart to Babu Pegisbia, always available for the BMF, even when he does not register in terms of RSVP, but he shows up. I'm not talking about this lecture. I'm saying in general, you are always available, you always show up, even when you don't register, but we know that you come and you always support the BMF. Even when you don't push you to arrive, you always make time to support, even if you're not speaking, but you always make the time. And we are really grateful for your presence. I'm not firing shots, Babusby. I'm not firing shots. I'll never do that. We also want to thank the leadership of SIRA in absentia. They did say that in terms of deployment of their leadership, they are quite thin in terms of deployment, but we've started a relationship with them, and they're quite keen to work with the BMF going forward. There are transformational issues which they've already highlighted in the space, which they want the attention of the BMF, and we thank them for their sponsorship and support as we build our relationship with them going forward. So thank you very much to SIRA in their absence. And also, in particular, we really would like to thank the BMF staff who have had an incredible year. And in our national calendar, this is the last national program of the year as we close the year. And it really has been quite a challenging year in the organization. But the staff have kept it together, the engine room. We really would like to thank them. In fact, can I please make you stand so that people can know who is in national office? I think a lot of us are here, but not everyone. But those who are here, can you please stand so that you can be acknowledged by everyone here? There's some at the back. Thank you very much for your time and contribution and your love of the organization. It definitely is greatly appreciated by all of us. We'd also like to thank the program director. Thank you very much, Siswam, for your time, for your energy. Thank you for also not requesting Bab Makwana to keep time. Right. So thank you very much for making that very clear disclaimer of how you operate. But today something told you to suspend your disclaimer and your position. So thank you very much for your time. And in a very special and dedicated way, Ubabumpo Makwana, Baba, it's always a pleasure to listen to you speak. It's always a pleasure to be challenged by your views. You're quite passionate about this generational thinking and futuristic thinking as well. And maybe President, let me abuse the platform a little bit. But I won't ask for a commitment from Bab Makwana now. But what I'm going to say is that we are still going to have our strategic session for the next 3 years. Maybe we should request Bab Makwana to be part of that strategic session in February next year, so that he can further disseminate these views and assist our thinking in terms of the BMF going into the future. We truly appreciate Baba all the time, and sometimes I have no words. Every time I listen to you, even if you say the same thing, you are saying it in a different way, in a different perspective, and we glean on your wisdom, we glean on your presence and your availability. You never say no to the BMF, and knowing very well that you've also grew up in the BMF, But like all the stalwarts would say, you never graduate in the BMF. You never say goodbye to the BMF, but you continue to grow. So Baba, thank you very much. We truly appreciate your time. We know how busy you are, but you always make the time to be there, to be present, and also to share your wisdom and your views, and to always challenge our thinking and our paradigm so that we can become future-proof leaders in the present context. So thank you very much for your time and your input this evening. So as we close, I'm going to request the President, the Provincial Chairperson, as well to come up as we hand over this token of appreciation to Bab Makwana. President. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, as well as yourselves for coming out tonight. It's still a working week, as we understand, but you've taken the time to come out tonight to support the lecture, but most importantly, to support the Black Management Forum as we continue to reflect on these great legacies as well. So 2025 is waiting for us, but most importantly, 2026, because in 2026, we become 50 years old. And by that time, we should be speaking a particular language in terms of our developmental agenda, our transformational agenda, which must pivot in a particular way. So every province must begin to punch above its weight and be challenged as well. So my office will be challenging you as I'm challenging other provinces, because when you turn 50, we really should be speaking a different language. So thank you very much. Have a good time. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and may you be safe in this country until we meet again. Thank you.
All right, thank you so very much. As we come to the end of the program, just a reminder of how dinner is going to be served. We'll use the time to just network as we're going to be getting dinner. There is a buffet at the back where the starters were served just behind you, and we'll make our way there. And just before we actually close, I second, Ntate Ndlovu, what you said about the lecture being taken to another province. I mean, you're already, in terms of planning, I mean, when you have the session, you said the strategic session in the new year, already you have an MC. I mean, so you're already ahead, as you are planning. So that's a good thing. You can, if you have a checklist, MC check, done. Just let me know which province we are going, I'll be there. So as we're going to be making our way to the back, let me ask first just my guests in the front to make their way to the back, and then we can all just, as we are networking, dinner will be served. So let's enjoy. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Thank you so much. My name is Mpho Mashita. Let's connect on LinkedIn. Let's connect on Facebook. Joking. Okay, maybe because I'm from Seychelles, maybe that's why. But thank you so very much. Let's enjoy dinner. Thank you.